Hi folks, I'm Kelly Kohlleffel with Fivetran. Over the next few minutes, I'll take you through a live demo of how insurance carriers are using Fivetran to accelerate data movement to Azure Synapse and also power the delivery of Azure-based data products and services. I had the opportunity over the past year to meet with several multi-service insurance agencies, and after introductions, I started the discussion by asking the simple but potentially loaded question, what's your biggest data challenge? Thinking I might get 60 seconds or so of hesitant answers, it was great to hear honest and thoughtful responses from a lot of the participants in that mini workshop format, and it challenged me to bring equally thoughtful approaches and recommendations back to them. I'll highlight quickly a few of the challenges that each of the organizations was dealing with at the time related to their data program. These were common themes that were repeated. First was time to insight due to lag time in acquiring a growing list of new data sources, and then persisting changes to those existing data sources to their analytics platform. Speed just wasn't there. Secondly, constraints due to architectural decisions. A lot of complexity in the existing processes, and then accumulated technical debt built up over the years that limited their options. Third, trying to lift and shift their previous on-prem end-to-end analytics platform into the cloud had limited success and value. Mainly felt like they were just moving the problem into another location, but still having the same types of constraints. Fourth was separation of responsibilities across the organization tended to cause delays and definitely a lot of frustration as well. Having the analytics team separate from the BI team, separate from the data apps team, separate from the cloud infrastructure team was a challenge. Next, varying skill sets and overall a lack of self-service capabilities. It was kind of I'll call it a get in line type of mentality. And then being able to quickly move from raw stage data to highly refined, consumer-ready, curated data in their data platform was challenging. Lastly, the testing time for new tech stack options and the engineering time associated with that testing was really significant. The insurance industry is being pushed for innovation, being asked for more pricing and insurance product transparency and access, and also being pressed for new data products and services, all combinations, ensuring that their clients have the best experience, world-class products, and also remain loyal while providing a platform for attracting and retaining new clients across all policy types. Today, I'll show you how to set up a couple of sources with Fivetran, a SaaS application source, which will be Salesforce. It has customer information in it, and then a relational database source, SQL Server, that has claims information in it. We'll connect those data pipelines to Azure Synapse with Fivetran. We'll do an initial sync of the two data sets as well as incremental syncs for change data capture as those sources are updated. I'll even build a quick report with preset from that new Synapse data. For me, the core tenets of Fivetran are making data pipelines and data movement, regardless of any source or any destination, fast, simple, self-serve, and operationally sustainable as a fully managed and fully automated pure SaaS service. All right, let's get our application source set up by adding the Salesforce Connector for some customer information that I want to access from Synapse. If I'm authenticated into Salesforce, then all I've got to do is provide my destination schema name. Importantly, I never have to create schemas and tables ahead of time in Synapse. In fact, I can name the schema here whatever I'd like. In this case, we'll use Accelerate Insurance Claims Salesforce, and Fivetran is going to create that schema in Synapse for me. My connection's authorized and my tests are complete. I'll save and test the connection to the Salesforce API. Our connector uses both the REST API and the Bulk API, which are optimized to use the fewest API calls possible. In practice, our customers find that Fivetran's not a significant API consumer, but our connector monitors consumption on both APIs. Next, the schemas that I have access to in Salesforce will be presented to me, and I can select the exact schemas, tables, and columns that I want to sync to Synapse. Most of the time, our customers will sync everything, but if I need to block certain aspects of that data set, I can do that right here. I'll go with the account table and grab a few columns from that table to sync to Synapse. I'm going to take the account number column and hash that. If I've got PII requirements that require additional data privacy and anonymization at the column level, I can do that here and still be able to use that anonymized data in the context of my analytics workflow downstream. The last thing I need to do is let Fivetran know how I want to handle changes. I'm going to connect to the Salesforce source, do the initial historical sync, and then Fivetran will set me up automatically for incremental updates for any new or modified data from my Salesforce source. During incremental updates, which happen once the initial sync is complete, we grab only the data that has changed since our last sync, so we aren't copying entire schemas or tables every time. You can allow all changes to schemas, tables, and columns and go all the way to the other end and block all. It's your choice. I can also update this later on if needed. For this connector, I am going to allow all changes. Now that I've selected the data that I want to sync and determine how I want to handle changes, I'll go ahead and start the initial sync. I'll stay on the status page for a few seconds, and as soon as our sync ends, I notice that the next sync will run in 6 hours, and I have 14 days of free use remaining for this connector after that initial sync. I'm going to select a 1-hour view and then hover over that green sync completion bar to take a look at the sync stats for this initial sync, including the start and end times, plus detail on extract, process, and load. Remember our schema name, Accelerate Insurance Claims Salesforce. Let's go take a look at our data in Synapse. I'm in the Azure Synapse data workspace, and I'll do a quick search for the schema and table that we moved over from Salesforce. There's a Salesforce account table, and from the Actions drop-down menu, I'll run a quick select statement on the top 100 rows for that table. Here are all the columns that we synced, and you might remember that I hashed the account number column to demonstrate the additional column level data privacy that you have with Fivetran. Now that I'm syncing account data from Salesforce, I'll get a SQL Server database source set up because that houses my claims data. I can do a quick search across the hundreds of connectors that Fivetran supports. We cover all 4 major categories of data sources: databases, applications, files, and events. Our database connectors include SQL Server, Oracle, DB2I, Postgres, MySQL, and other widely used databases. For this connector, I'll name the schema Accelerate Insurance Claims SQL Server, and Fivetran will create that in Synapse for me. Next, I'll provide the key information that Fivetran needs to connect to the SQL Server source. We also have an easy-to-follow setup guide for all of our connectors on the right side gray navigation. I'm choosing to connect directly to the SQL Server source, which does require a TLS certificate. We do have a number of additional options for database connectivity, including SSH, reverse SSH, private link. We also support a VPN tunnel. It's really up to you how you want to connect with Fivetran to database sources and how best to align to your organizational security and infrastructure requirements. Fivetran will run a series of connectivity tests and checks to the SQL Server source, and importantly, we encrypt all data in motion by default with TLS 1.2 or higher. Every database we're connecting to directly must have a certificate installed and selected before Fivetran will validate the connection. So we selected that certificate, and Fivetran runs the rest of the connectivity tests. And next, the schemas that I have access to in that SQL Server database will be presented to me, and I can select the exact schemas, tables, and columns for my claims data that I want to sync to Synapse. With this data set, I'm going to hash the authorities contacted column for additional data privacy, but as before, I'll still be able to use that anonymized data in the context of my analytics workflow downstream. Fivetran will automatically set up the SQL Server database for incremental updates of any new or modified data. During those incremental updates, we grab only the data that's changed since our last sync. As before, I can make my incremental chain selection here. We use either one of SQL Server's 2 built-in tracking mechanisms for incremental updates: change tracking, CT, or change data capture, CDC. And we can also use Fivetran Teleport Sync, which allows Fivetran to incrementally replicate your database with no additional setup other than a read-only SQL connection. You could have certain SQL Server databases that change tracking is best for, or change data capture or teleport. It's really your call for each SQL Server source database. So let's start our initial sync for the claims data in SQL Server. And this sync is going to run really quick. We have a small claims data set in this case. Once the sync is finished, if I select a 1-hour view and hover over that green sync completion bar to take a look at the sync stats for this initial sync, I can see start and end, plus detail on extract, process, and load times. I'll take a quick peek at Fivetran's top navigation for you. Fivetran logs are great to understand what's going on behind the scenes. We make data movement and data pipelines fast, simple, and self-serve, but there's a ton of hard work going on behind the scenes, as you can see from the logs that were generated just during that short amount of time from creating the connector to the sync end. I selected the schema, tables, and columns that I wanted to sync in our setup, but I can always come back and change that here. This is a new connector that I just created, but you'll see connector usage metrics after 7 days, and you can always get 14 days free after the initial sync. Fivetran also sets us up for incremental syncs and change data capture for our SQL Server source or any source. 6 hours is a default, and I can slide that range in between 24 hours and even down to 1 minute for our high volume agent database connectors. I'll hit on the destination setup page from the left navigation. This is where I can edit my connection details if needed or even change my Azure region. Remember our schema name, Accelerate Insurance Claims SQL Server. Let's go take a look at our data in Synapse. I'm in the Synapse workspace. Here's the insurance claims table that we moved over from SQL Server, and from the Actions drop-down menu, I'll run a quick select statement on the top 100 rows. Here are all the columns that we synced, and you might remember I hashed the authorities contacted column to demonstrate the additional column level data privacy that you can have with Fivetran. So you can check that out here, and all of your data is available and ready to go for analytics or new data apps, any other purposes that you may have or other workloads with Synapse. Okay, now that we've got the SQL Server claims data in Synapse with Fivetran, why don't we close the loop? Let's use Preset to build a quick, simple report using the new data that's in our Synapse database. Synapse does support a wide range of tools to build data applications and products, different analytics and BI reports, and I chose to use Preset here, but you could use Power BI, Tableau, Sigma, ThoughtSpot, or others. I've chosen my database, which is Synapse, and now I simply select the schema and tables that I want to use for this analytic report. I've got a lot of options, but I'm going to use the big number chart for this report. I like it because it's simple and clear. Incident date is selected for my time column, and I'm going to choose total claim amount for the metric I'm interested in for this report. I'm looking for my total claim amount across all incidents that have occurred. I'll create the chart, and I've got a little over $52 million in claims. Let's go ahead and save this chart because I want to add it to a dashboard later on. I'll name it Total Claims, staying with the common theme for our demo. I'll add that chart as the very first one to a new dashboard, which I'll name Claims Dashboard. From there, I just have to drag my total claims chart onto that dashboard. I can always create additional reports and visualizations and add those in later on, share them out, whatever I'd like to do. The last thing I'll do is save that dashboard, and we're ready to go. We took a quick look at how Fivetran delivers simplicity, speed, and self-service and operationally sustainable insurance carrier data to Synapse for both an application, Salesforce, and a relational database, SQL Server. I really hope this was helpful to you. I would absolutely encourage you to get a 14-day free trial started now with Fivetran, or just reach out to us, talk about your specific data movement challenges and how we can help your team deliver all types of insurance carrier data workloads and outcomes faster and easier. Thanks for joining me. Have a wonderful day.